Hello and welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Your Financial Future. I am Ben Schrock, and joining me today, the guy that drew the short straw in the office, Dan Oaklief. Dan,
how are we doing,
Ben? Good, man. How are you?
Good.
Appreciate you volunteering for our episode today. And with as the year comes to an end, here we are in Q4. With our practice, we do a lot of our conversations around Roth IRAs and Roth conversions around this time of the year. So we decided to hop on here real quick, record about 2 episodes regarding Roth IRA. So Dan's going to kind of we're going to do some Q&A back and forth. And the first episode, we're going to focus a little bit about what is a Roth, what is a difference between a contribution and conversion. We've touched base on these in the past when we talk about RMDs and IRAs and things like that, but never specifically about Roths. So Dan, let's just fire it off right now. What is a Roth IRA to start, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so a Roth works a little bit different than a pre-tax IRA. So what a Roth is it's after-tax money that goes in from a retirement account standpoint, okay? It works the same in the pre-tax IRA in the fact that all of your earnings grow tax deferred, but the big difference is when you start taking out money when you're in retirement from the Roth, it all comes out tax free, which is awesome because if you put in 20 grand, it grew to 150 grand. When you're starting to take out withdrawals and distributions in those retirement years, all that 150 grand is going to be tax free. So it's very helpful to retirees to have at least a bucket of their retirement money be on the Roth side. So it's very, very beneficial that we see in our practice for clients to have.
And what is the rules to contribute here in 2023, making a contribution to a Roth?
Yeah, so that's one thing we have to make sure of, because if you have too high of an income, then you cannot contribute to a Roth. So when we sit down with our clients, we look at everything under the sun when it comes to their income to see if they're eligible to contribute or not. We use a very easy little cheat sheet on us that gives us, okay, here's your income, here's what you guys are bringing in this year, are you able to contribute to a Roth IRA? Now, here's one big thing that we see that needs clarification. If you do have a Roth option in your 401k, it does not matter how much you make. So you can make 10 grand, you can make 10 million. You are able to contribute the max to what you can put in a 401k with Roth money. So that's something we definitely use and advise clients to look at if it's in the right situation, is if they have availability of a Roth 401k at their employer, we will definitely use that a lot of times to hedge that income problem.
And there's, like you mentioned, higher contribution limits, right? So if you're under 50, the limit this year is what, $6,500 if you have a Roth IRA?
Yep.
And then $7,500 from the catch-up if
Yep.
you're over 50. You have to be working, right? Making that income versus, what is the 401k, 26?
It's 20 and change. Yeah. So if you're over 50, it's right around that 26, 27. What they do, just to give you guys a heads up on that, is they always index for inflation. So it goes up anywhere from like $500 a year indexed for the inflationary period. So so there's a big difference between putting 20-something grand in away from a Roth side as opposed to putting that 65 or 7,500 in from an IRA standpoint.
Almost 3 to 4 times the amount.
For sure.
It's huge.
Absolutely.
So now the one thing we mentioned about the contributions and contributing to there, and the one thing we didn't talk about really quick is if you're just doing a Roth IRA on your own, those income limits, if you file married filing joint versus married filing separate, a lot of times people miss that. Can you touch base on that real quick?
Yeah, so it's just like very similar to regular tax brackets. So as everybody knows, there's difference for a single person as to somebody married filing joint, head of household, widowed, stuff like that. So it's very important to know where you align with that and how you guys do your taxes. If you're single, it's pretty straightforward. The limit's a little bit lower if you have to contribute to a Roth IRA. But if you're married filing joint, it's a pretty high number up there for to get to where you can contribute to it. So that's something to where if you're sitting down with an advisor, sitting down planning, that's something that's a very important planning piece to make sure that you're eligible for it and you don't have to recoup if you go over that limit.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I was trying to look it up. It's over 200,000, right?
Yeah. For married filing joint, I think it's like 218 to 220 and change. Quote me on that, but it's right around there as to when they start reducing how much you can contribute to it.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is when you do married filing separate, like they almost deter you. Like if you're trying to contribute to Roth, the IRS kind of deters you from doing it because I think the income limit there is like 10 grand on your modified adjusted gross that phases you out. So if you make over 10 grand married filing separate, then you're pretty much hosed. You can't make that contribution.
And Ben's right. That inclination and kind of juxtaposition for that is very important for people who are student loans because we see a lot of people come in our office that are married filing separately for the fact that it helps them from a student loan standpoint. So we have to line up, okay, what's the best thing to do overall? We don't want to mess up one or the other, but we want to make sure we get everything right from a holistic plan.
Yep. So that's a little bit about the contribution. Now, when maybe later on, so you're looking at, and potentially in your retired years or getting close to it, walk me through a little bit about a conversion, because contribution and conversions are two different things. Contribution, obviously, we're putting money into it up to a certain limit, and conversion, what's that process look like, and what are some of the things you have to consider when you do something like that? Yeah,
we wish we had a different word for it because it gets very, very gray because most people confuse contribution with conversion. So what conversion process is taking money from your pre-tax account. So it could be a pre-tax 401k, a pre-tax IRA, or what they call a traditional IRA, and then converting it into a Roth. Now, here's the really cool thing about it. There are no limits as to how much you can convert in a set year. It's kind of up to you, okay? That's where tax planning comes in from a holistic financial plan is how much can we convert in a year in order to stay within a certain tax bracket that we're looking at. And that's one of the huge things Ben talked about. Okay, contributions wise, a lot of times it's going to be $7,500 to contribute. You can convert, for example, $100,000 in a full year. We do it for a lot of clients to get them ready for, we've talked about it before, RMD process and RMD ages to where they don't hit that tax bubble when they hit their RMD age. So that's something we use a lot. If it's for the right situation for our clients, is using Roth conversions. In most people's, this is a ballpark baseline for us, usually happens when people are in their 60s, but we have certain circumstances where we have late 50s doing it, early 70s doing it, so it's just got to fit your plan, but it can be very, very beneficial when it comes to a holistic plan.
So in that process, then they take the money out of the IRA, that conversion process. They just move it to the Roth, and they get a 1099 to show that as income that year.
Right, 100%. And that's why we have to sit down and make sure that this is the best thing to do, because we look at it as like a long-term process in our office. So what's the best thing for client A and client B to do over a 30-year span? And if the tax savings is significant enough, that's why we say, hey, you know what? That Roth conversion for example, over 5 years will save you, let's say, throw out $300,000 in tax savings for 30 years. So obviously you're going to pay a little bit more on the front end, but is it worth it as a long-term view to do them for your entirety of your retirement years?
And I think it's become more relevant than ever because of the tax situation that we're in. We have never seen standard deductions, at least in my lifetime, and yours as well, standard deductions this high. So, and that is set to expire here at the end of 2025. So tax year 2026, we revert back to the way that taxes were under the Obama administration. So that's going to change our standard deduction. So there are certain things that we're looking at from a planning perspective, which we'll touch base on part 2 here and get into the weeds a little bit more and things that we consider and things that we dive into from an advisor standpoint. But it is something that has become top of mind, and it is always top of mind for us in Q4 of the year. So it's a good idea to just touch base on that.
For sure.
Talk a little bit about the benefits. I know you mentioned in the beginning, Dan, about what a Roth is, growing tax deferred. Talk about the rules of getting the money out tax free and what people have to do to get to that point.
Yeah. So a real cool thing we have to delineate between. So if you contribute to a Roth, technically all of your contributions are always able to be pulled out. The only rub is if you're talking about interest or earnings, you have to wait until 59 and a half and have 5 years in the plan from that perspective to get contributions and earnings out tax-free. So that's something we make sure of is we hit all the parameters and checks and balances to where all of our clients are pulling out tax-free money and not having to pay a quote-unquote penalty. Like Ben said earlier, another reason why we liked Roth is once it's in that Roth bucket, the government, as we know, can change by the wind, we feel like now. So the one big thing when you have in it is when you have money in the Roth, whatever they do with taxes, it comes out tax-free. So even if they do an extremely large tax hike, if let's say, for example, you were sitting at 12% and God forbid something were to happen in the world, and now that 12% bracket turns into, God forbid, a 35% tax bracket, you don't change at all when you're taking out distributions for the Roth because you already paid taxes on it. So that's something that we have to talk with our clients about, especially the clients that are right now earning in a lower tax bracket, probably their lowest tax bracket they'll ever earn, especially our younger clients, is really take advantage of that situation because we always talk, and Keith, if you have heard him on a podcast, one of his favorite sayings is control what you can control. In that instance, regardless of what they're doing from a tax, political, Congress standpoint, you know that you have this bucket to where it could be 12% taxes or 40% taxes. You don't have to worry about it because that bucket alone is always going to be tax-free. So that's something really cool. It's kind of like our Swiss Army knife bucket to where we can use it and we can plan on it and do really cool things from a planning perspective with our clients if they have that Roth option.
Yeah, makes sense. It's such a beneficial tool, and I think it's a key to people saving for retirement at a younger age. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, Dan, with the Roth 401k option. If you have that option, I mean, I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, but man, take advantage of that because you after a while you won't even miss it.
Yeah.
It comes out after tax, okay, so you're not getting that tax break, but take advantage of it on the front end, and as you get raises, maybe put a little bit more in and be disciplined on it. And I still think there's benefits to save some pre-tax. Take advantage of that, know where your income falls, and that's the benefit of working with someone like Dan or myself or our firm is that we can help them navigate that. And then when it gets a little bit more complex situations, when we talk about big conversions with clients that have maybe too much money in a pre-tax bucket, we'll involve a CPA or the client's accountant. If they need an introduction, we have a couple of accounting firms we work with where we can make those introductions. So it's something to where all professionals put their hats on and everyone thinks together for the client in front of us.
Yeah, that's what we always say is come on in, sit down. Don't be afraid to ask, is this the best way to do it? Because we'll tell you, once we have your financial plan in our software and kind of shows us, hey, what's the best option in Alleyway, we'll tell you, hey, you know what? In this year, let's do half of the 401k to the pre-tax, half to the Roth IRA. If you're available. One big thing we talk about is this, like Ben said, kind of contributing to both from a 401k. Keep in mind here, if you're contributing to a Roth 401k and you're getting a match, that match is going in the pre-tax bucket. Yep. So you're able to use both kind of buckets available if you do Roth 401k and have a match, which a lot of companies do have pretty good matches from that end. So you're checking off both of the boxes, both the pre-tax and Roth side. Yeah, and last thing I'll add to the Roth, and then we'll break and we'll come back for part two, is don't think of the Roth IRA as your investment, right? Mm-hmm. I visualize, okay, this is your tax umbrella, if you will, right? So underneath that Roth IRA, you can buy a stock, a bond, a mutual fund, an annuity. You can buy whatever a CD, whatever type of investment you want. It's just the tax umbrella. Classification. Yeah, classification. Yep. So you're not limited to your investment options. It works just like everything else from that perspective. It does grow tax defer, like Dan mentioned earlier. So it definitely is a beneficial tool. For sure. Alrighty, so we're going to wrap things up, Dan. Stay tuned for part two, where we're going to dive into more some of the strategies that we use here in our office when we look at Roth conversion process or making recommendations around a Roth IRA. If you have any questions for us in the meantime, you can always reach out to our office at 330-473-1060 or check us out online at www.baschrock-fg.com. Again, it's 330-473-1060 or www.baschrock-fg.com. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Ben.